afternoon. Hello. My name is Laura Schuler. I'm a strategy director here at Complete College America, and we're really excited to have you here this afternoon. Hopefully the conference is going well for you. Today we're going to have a great conversation with Tina Gridiron, who's the Senior Vice President at ACT's Center for Equity and Learning, and with Christopher Guidry, that's what I thought, Vice President for Community Affairs at Kale. And so we are just really excited to have them. And so I want to get out of the way so that we can hear all that they have to share with us today. So thank you for coming.
Thank you. For those of you who I do not know in the audience, I am based in Indianapolis, Indiana, and I currently serve as the Senior Vice President for ACT's Center for Equity and Learning. And we are excited about today's conversation about credit for prior learning assessments. This session grew out of a blog post that CCA, Kale, and ACT put together back in January of 2023, highlighting all of the strategies and the issues and concerns that are showing up around the prior learning assessment conversation, particularly for first-generation students of color, students from low-income backgrounds. Please know that we hope this will be a conversation. We recognize there are many of you in the audience that are engaged in the PLA conversation very deeply in your state, at your institution, with your association, and so we want to be part of the conversation with each of you. So if something comes up for you and you'd like to either share, let us know, raise your hand. We hope to have a conversation. You've been in sessions all day with individuals probably talking to you, and we hope that this will be an opportunity for exchange. Chris and I go way back as colleagues in the philanthropic space as well as in the higher education access and success space. We're not going to do a full bio. If you have spent time on the app, you'll get a sense of some of the work we have done in the past. I want to welcome our folks who are online, who are joining in the conversation today. We are excited about CCA integrating online with face-to-face experience. Today's session will be taking from or drawing from some great research done by Witchy and Kale back in 2020. For those of you who are knee-deep in the pandemic, you might have seen it or you might have missed it. It was Boost. It was a research study that looked at 72 institutions. And so we will be referencing that work as we talk about prior learning assessments. And as you think about questions you might have for us or elements that you might want to share, I would highly recommend that you go to that research study. You can Google Kale Boost Research Prior Learning Assessment. It will bring that up so that it will give you a sense of anchoring for our conversation today. I'm a firm believer that it's important to give credit where credit is due, and the great work that Kale and Witchy did back in 2020 serves to ground our conversation today as a bit of background. One other thing that I'd just like to share before we jump in is some of you might be wondering, why is ACT sitting on that stage right now talking about credit for prior assessment? Yes, I do work for ACT, the assessment organization, ACT that is known for the ACT test, but many of you in the audience might know that ACT in its 62+ year history in the workforce arena as well as in the essential skills or non-cognitive skills arena. So when you look at the portfolio of where ACT shows up and all of the things that we care about, you get a bit of information around workforce, a bit of information about non-cognitive supports and skills development, as well as the ACT, those academic skills. And in the workforce arena, we have quite a few pieces of work that allow us to advance our commitment to help all learners achieve education and workforce success. Specifically, our National Career Readiness Certificate is a certificate that if you achieve platinum, silver, or gold you are allowed to use that resource in the prior learning assessment journey for credit into college. So as we are talking about the different strategies that organizations use, I believe in truth in advertising. ACT has a tool that many students could use. They are demonstrating what they know and are able to do. But because ACT has been in the providing work keys curriculum since 1992, and over 4 million individuals have taken advantage of the NCRC, the National Career Readiness Certificate. We show up in this space as just one of many ways that students are able to identify what they know and are able to do, and how students are able to package that for college credit. I give much kudos or mini kudos to Complete College America when they talk about time being the enemy. When we think about the value of prior learning assessment, it is a mechanism for, if it's done well, decreasing that time to completion. If it's done well, decreasing the cost to completion. If it's done well, helping an individual learner articulate what they know and are able to do in very robust and powerful ways. So with all of that, you will see that we also engage the workforce community, employers, over 20,000 profiles done of different jobs across the United States that are also mechanisms for individuals to articulate what they know and are able to do. Of course, you'll see that we have our Work Keys curriculum and our Work Keys assessment supports. And as an organization, we want the mix in the conversation about what matters, what is working, and how do we improve that for the future. The Center for Equity and Learning is a division within ACT that leans in whenever the conversation centers around first generation, students of color, students from low-income backgrounds. And it is exciting for me to partner with Chris on this stage and with you in this conversation. The last slide, just as part of my introduction about who I am and what ACT is bringing to the table, this just gives you a little more information about the National Career Readiness Certificate. It articulates the different levels of mastery that an individual is able to demonstrate skills and competencies in. And because of ACE's review, credential, that is what gives it the green light, if you will, for a student to apply for credit on your campuses if they choose to use the NCRC. And we are thrilled about the uptake of the NCRC in all 50 states. There is an opportunity for students to take advantage of that. That gives you a little bit of background. I also must say that the anchor for this conversation, I mentioned the BOOST study that you're all Googling right now so that you can check our information as we go along. The BOOST study was also supported by grant dollars from Lumina Foundation and from Strata Education Network. So what you find is there's a robust conversation in the philanthropic sector as well as in the higher education and association sectors around this. And because I spent some time at Lumina before coming to ACT, it's also exciting to see the work continue to mature and develop over time. With that, I'm going to pass it over to my colleague, Chris, to give you a little bit of background around CAEL.
Absolutely. But first, I want to say that I was actually at ACT when ACT went through the first process with ACE to get that credit for the National Career Readiness Certificate. And it was a rigorous process. We submitted, back then it was still paper, lots of paper, reams of documents to ACE, and it worked out where they were able to give us credit, and it's a beautiful thing. So if you do have a National Career Readiness Certificate, you can get, I think, up to six credit hours,
yes.
7 credit hours from a school, which is wonderful. My name is Chris Guidry. I am Vice President of Community Affairs at CAEL. We spell CAEL C-A-E-L, which is a Council for Adult Experiential Learning. Most of you know CAEL is K-A-L-E. We're better than that CAEL. That CAEL is not good. It doesn't taste good. Most people say they like it, but they really don't like it. But people do like us. Sorry, I was just testing you. We're a national nonprofit. We've been around since 1974, so almost 50 years. We turned 50 years this year, and we're celebrating that at our conference in New Orleans. It'll be in November. And we're really centered around adult learners. We help adult learners in the institutions that we work with, help those adult learners navigate off and on ramps through education and employment. And our biggest tool for that is credit for prior learning. So we work with many 2- and 4-year institutions on how they can best serve adult learners. And we'll talk more about what we mean by adult learners a little bit later on. So this is who we serve. We serve post-secondary learning institutions, workforce development, employers, and mission-aligned associations as well. So we also run NACTEL, which is Telecommunications Industry Association, as well as an industry association as well. So we really do have really good communication and relationships with employers throughout the country in many different industries. In fact, a couple of things we're working on. One of the things we're working on right now is a project. We received $15.7 million from the Truist Foundation. The Truist Foundation serves the Truist banks, which are primarily in the southeast portion of the United States. So if you're in the southeast, you definitely have seen a Truist bank, or you've even banked at a Truist bank. Well, we're taking that money and we're working with groups that serve adult learners in those areas. So we started up already in Nashville, Memphis, Charlotte. We're looking at 3 other cities throughout the Southeast in order to set up financial training centers, so people can become trained in the financial services industry, and not just training them, but also looking at what other jobs are available in those industries and putting together career ladders for those folks. Because we know that getting a first job is wonderful, but if you can create a whole opportunity, a whole way of life for people, that's even better. So move on. Oh, so we're really here to talk about PLA and prior learning assessments and credit for prior learning. And Tina's going to kick us off with that.
Thank you, Chris. So for those of you who are in the room, how many of you run your campus's PLA or credit for prior learning program? Do we have any implementers in the room? I see a few of you in the room. I know that we have some folks online. So those of you who are online, we appreciate you staying with us. Some of this might be a bit of 101 just to level set if someone is coming into this conversation new and unfamiliar with PLA. What we know is that it started in the 1930s. There was a great New America overview brief about prior learning assessment, which I would highly recommend, which tracked the process of identifying what individuals know and are able to do and packaging that for credit for prior learning all the way back to the 1930s. We know that there has been research where institutions have been asked, do you have a credit for prior learning process or a PLA process? And currently 8 out of 10 surveyed articulate that they have some way of capturing what students are sharing, whether it would be through many different vehicles, but at least one process is available. And so when we talk about credit for prior learning or prior learning assessments or experiential learning, you might hear all of those terms used interchangeably depending on the campus, depending on the circumstance, and all of that is about identifying what an individual knows and is able to do, how do we package it, how do we validate it, and then how do we give the student credit through whatever process of credit that an institution is managing. How do we give them credit for that knowledge. If higher education is about knowledge acquisition and then demonstration of that knowledge in different spheres, whether it be the volunteer space or the workforce space or the civic engagement space, however that space emerges, we want to be about accelerating and deepening and strengthening that knowledge acquisition and then the demonstration of that competency in many different ways. And PLA is one of the ways, credit for prior learning is one of the ways that that happens. I'm going to grab this. That there are many different vehicles that individuals, learners can use to gain mastery in different skills or different competencies. Some of that is volunteer work, some of that is on the job. It might be through apprenticeships, it might be through some type of formal training. But as Chris and I were talking to prepare for today's session, what we know is that any experience that an individual can have could be a mechanism for deepening and strengthening their knowledge base, their skills base, their understanding of a particular topic. And so we have provided some examples here, but it's just a few. I know that many of you on your campus might look at even military and other mechanisms for encouraging students to identify that they have been through an experience and then giving them the chance to articulate what they learned from that experience and what skills and competencies they have. And as I shared in the beginning, I can't see the screen right now, but I'm assuming that you're seeing a slide with an arrow. Thank you so much for those of you who are responsive, because the way this is set up, we're flying blind. But we know that there are many mechanisms that and strategies and approaches that campuses use to encourage a student to demonstrate their skill. It could be through a certification process like the National Career Readiness Certificate that ACT provides. It could be through AP exams that the College Board provides. It could be through a mechanism of portfolios where a student is able to articulate their skill set. So what we know is there are many different mechanisms for packaging that learning or for demonstrating that learning. And at this stage, there is probably 5 or 6 other ways that we haven't mentioned. Are there other ways that come to your mind?
Yeah,
Chris?
we'll get into those here in a little bit in one of the other slides. Absolutely.
Okay. Fair enough, fair enough. If there is someone in the room that wants to make sure that we get another vehicle out, raise your hand or yell it out, and I'll make sure to say it again for our folks online to be able to hear. Is there another approach that you have seen for packaging and allowing the student to go through a process that might be different than what you see on the screen?
I guess we covered it.
With that, we'll go over to the next slide, which is talking about the adult learner population. Chris?
Yes, the adult learner population. So when we talk about adult learners, what do we mean by adult learners? Well, at Cale, typically we think of adult learners as being 25 years or older, enrolled less than full-time, obviously, as they are adults with jobs and potentially children. And so going full-time is not something that's usually something they're able to do. Generally, these folks are also self-directed, and education is very important to them. If it wasn't important to them, they wouldn't be there because they have other things to do, obviously. And these are results-oriented people with tons of experiences in and out of the classroom. As Tina mentioned, could be at work, could be volunteer service, or anything else. Mine too. Oh, okay. So this is the PLA boost that Tina had mentioned earlier. So this study was done. It was 72 institutions back in, you said 2020, and we looked at, I believe, it was 42 four-year institutions and 30 community colleges, and we looked at public schools, private institutions, nonprofit, and for-profit as well. Yes, and we'll get into those. What happened with that study? What we saw with PLA or CPL, whatever you want to call it, increased degree completion, and we'll talk about what those numbers look like. It's substantial. Reduced time to degree, which is also substantial. It could be up to 1 semester or 2 semesters. And increased credit earning as well. So the students that came into these institutions with credit actually spent more money on credits than the average students would. So when you talk about what's in it for the institution, well, they're going to get someone who's driven, someone who wants to complete, someone who's going to persist, and you're getting someone who's also going to continue to spend their hard-earned dollars on classes at your institution. So we'll move on to who offers credit for prior learning. As Tina said, about 79% of the responding institutions that we talked to offered one or more CPL option. And I guess it makes some sense that the institutions less likely to offer CPL are smaller, more rural institutions, and selective institutions as well, some of the Ivy Leagues. Harvard may not accept your certification for project management. They may have their own thing they're working on because they're Harvard. And then we'll take a look at the CPL methods used by institutions. So this is what Tina had mentioned before. Most institutions use standardized exams. They'll use evaluations of non-college education and training, individual assessments as well, and you can see the percentages that those are used by. The most common forms of standardized exams used are right here. And obviously you can see that it's advanced placement exams are number one, right? Which makes sense. Tina and I both have students who are in high school who are taking AP exams, and we're desperately hoping that they score high enough on those exams so they're able to get credit in their institutions when they go to four-year school or two-year school, wherever they end up. The most common individualized assessments used are portfolio assessments. I'll talk about portfolio assessments, a little bit later on as well when I talk about an example. But they're really a great way for potential students to come into your organization and share with you the knowledge, the experiences, and the skills they've learned and they've obtained in the outside world. And it's a great way to look at their whole person, look at the whole self, to determine what they may be able to bring in order to save money and save time on those exams. The next one is, I hope it says, how students are made aware of CPL opportunities. Brilliant. As you can see, most of the time, students are made aware of CPL through staff or through a literature that schools will send out about registering for classes or how students can bring their experiences onto campus. And so in our experiences, when we visit institutions, many times they'll ask us, what's the best way to connect with adult learners who may or may not be interested in coming to our campus? And really, the schools that we know that are really good at this have someone there. They have someone on campus whose sole responsibility is really assisting those adult learners and getting them onto campus and making them aware of the services that the institution provides for those folks. And oftentimes, those folks are the best way, the best avenue to advertise that you have a CPL program at your school. All right. Oh, CPL usage by method. All right, great. I'm going to need to get up on this one real quick. So as you can see here on this slide, really the most used credit for prior learning are military training credits, 68%. And that's really a testament to, I believe, our military. They do a really, really good job of interviewing their veterans before they are discharged, and letting them know, making them very, very aware of all the credits they can obtain from their military service. It's also a testament, I think, to ACE that did most of the legwork in looking to see and validating what experiences and skills translate into what courses on a college campus. And so those are really, really highly used.
Yeah, we can move on to
Yeah,
the next one.
yep,
If
we're
you
good.
did you already advance the slide, or
I
do I
advanced-
need
I advanced
to?
it for you.
You advance it, and you're seeing 3 circles that say 49, 27, and 17.6. Very good. So one of the exciting elements that was discovered through the Boost study was that if an individual went through the prior learning assessment process or the credit for prior learning assessment process, they actually had a higher likelihood of completion, 49% completion as compared to 27% completion for those individuals who did not go through a PLA or credit for prior learning approach. As Chris has shared, they on average took 17.6 more units than the student who did not go through the prior learning assessment process. So 2 things for institutions that are wavering or wondering, do I need to make the investment in prior learning assessment if you're an institution that's all about completion as well as access and persistence? This is a good reason to lean in on PLA. Those students are likely to complete. In addition, it is a value add to the institution if on average, the students are actually taking more credits than a non-PLA student. Right. So when we talk about the investment in PLA, oftentimes folks want to come to the conversation with, I don't have staff time, I don't have the budget for it, I don't have the rationale for it. Well, if you are part of the conversation that says we need highly educated individuals that are able to address the needs of the future, the completion conversation is one that is full of richness right now. PLA is a strategy in your toolbox that you should consider, and that it actually is a revenue generator for your campus when you think about students taking classes. In addition,
Go ahead,
I'm
just want to jump in
please.
just really quickly. So you look at that 49% number, right? It's 49%.
Mm-hmm.
It goes up if you take out the military credits. It goes up to, I believe, 73%. And if you look at portfolio, so those students that come in to your institution and they receive credits via a portfolio presentation, their graduation rate goes up to 80%, which I think is really super high. And so it's something that really all institutions should be looking at, is trying to verify those life experiences through portfolio.
Another exciting finding, if you are seeing it, the slide that talks about saving money, what we know is that even though the students are taking more credits, even though they are engaged before they come to the campus, they are saving time and they are saving money. We know that Complete College America is all about saving time and saving money. Right. So the PLA conversation, what the Boost research tells us is that it leads us down a road that is good for the institution as well as good for the student. It allows them to make progress more rapidly than a student that doesn't go through this process. So what is exciting about Boost, you should be seeing a recommends slide now. The last page of the Boost study gives you several recommendations as an institution that you might want to consider. It is an opportunity for a systems approach rather than a siloed approach. It is an opportunity to increase the number of academic advisors or faculty advisors or individuals that know about about the PLA process on your campus and are able to identify students who could participate in it. It is an opportunity to connect both federal and state dollars with your PLA program or your PLA system. Thinking creatively about the resources that are out there is another strategy or another component that the Boost research encourages. It's important to note, however, that the original research was released in 2020 that looked at the 72 institutions and provided a report. Then in October of 2021, Kale and Witchy went back to the same research and asked the question, what are some unique elements or unique characteristics when we look at it from an equity lens? And I'm going to let Chris talk a little bit about how this second report that came out of the research builds on the recommendations that were in the first research, but actually provides a bit more nuance when we talk about first generation, students of color, students from low resourced communities.
Yeah, so we've talked about just now, and we've shown you the slides about the impact that credit for prior learning can have on students. It's a wonderful thing. However, when we look at the numbers, only about 11% of those adult learners are actually using credit for prior learning when they come into these institutions. And so I just want to put that lens on it while we talk about equity. In this report, we found that Black students, Pell Grant students, Hispanic students receive a greater completion boost. So they're much more likely to persist and to graduate than a non-minority student because of CPL. So when you look at these students that we're concerned with and we're talking about right now, it's vitally important that CPL is mentioned, is offered, and is discussed with them because it will help them even more than it would help other students possibly, which is important. And even though it's much more likely to boost their completion, they're less likely to use it, which is an issue. So when we take a look at the numbers here, the boosted completion for Black adults is 14%. For Hispanic adults, 24%. For Pell Grant recipients, low-income students, 33%. Adults at community colleges, 25%. So you've got a tool that will help with equity with these students, but it's being underutilized. So we look at that as an opportunity. It's an opportunity to really tie CPL, credit for prior learning, with other initiatives you may have ongoing at your college in order to get students boosted when it comes to persistence and when it comes to completion. And again, we know it's going to save those students money, and it's going to save them time as well, which we discussed. And is there a picture of a woman on the screen now? No? What did I do? Ah, yeah. All right, so once upon a time, there was a girl who graduated from high school in Memphis. Her name was Lois. Lois is a twin. Her sister's name is Joyce. So you have Lois and Joyce. Lois and Joyce both did everything they needed to do in high school to complete and graduate, and both decided to go to the University of Memphis. Great school, great city. And they go to University of Memphis for one semester. And because of financial reasons, they both had to drop out. They both had to drop out for financial reasons. Not because they weren't smart enough or couldn't do the work, just didn't have the money. And then life happens. Lois gets married. She has children. One of her children is named DeAndre. And at 3 years old, DeAndre had an accident where he received a traumatic brain injury. And then later on, when he turned 9, he had some serious seizures that happened, and ended up needing some care throughout his life. But he was still able to go to high school, and then DeAndre actually went to University of Memphis and graduated. And so Lois was at a parent meeting, and where the provost was talking. The provost mentioned their CPL program. And it got Lois thinking, hey, look, if I can, talk about what I've been doing since I haven't been in college, maybe I'll get enough credits where I can be able to go back, and it makes sense, time-wise and affordability-wise. So Lois had her own business. She started her own business. It was event planning and weddings. And so she had a budget. She had to manage vendors, project management skills. Also, because her son was somewhat disabled, she had to advocate for him. And then she had to teach him how to advocate for himself when he got onto a college campus. So she has all these experiences as an entrepreneur and as a parent. And she was able to walk into the University of Memphis. She went through the portfolio process there. She submitted 30 papers and received 30 hours of credit from Memphis, and she only needed 42 hours left to graduate, and she did so. And so I just wanted to point out and kind of share the story with you because it does have it does matter. And it matters to these individuals who come to our institutions, who need our assistance, who can do the work and have this experience. So I definitely wanted to share that with you.
Know that we only have a couple more slides, so we will get out on time for those of you who are watching your clock. But in both reports, there are a list of recommendations. You should see strategies proposed to improve PLA on the screen. Excellent. I would recommend taking a look at both reports because it gives you the anchor that you may need to convince your institution to lean in more intentionally. I always like to refer back to Dr. Estela Ben-Simon at USC, who says equity by design is about intentionality. It's starting with the learner first. It's recognizing what the learner needs, what the individual needs, and then building the program or process or policy around their success rather than leading with the institution's success first. So equity by design shows up in the Equity Boost report as an anchor for why this work will work if you are intentional. We know that the siloed approach creates challenges and barriers for learners as they enter our campuses. So, of course, they are recommending that we tear down the silos and that we work across divisions and departments and areas of campus to promote assessment. In both reports, marketing and information sharing and identifying students who are traditional age as well as adult learners who might be good candidates for PLA, creating a robust pipeline for them to get the information and then to have the support that Lois had or around how do I then activate this pre-PLA process. It's one thing for us to put the information on our websites and say it's set, it's now up to the student to get it or the learner to get it, and it's another thing to be intentional, to be proactive, if you will, to be collaborative, if you will, with the students and parents along that journey, with learners, with their employers. Some of the 72 institutions work with employers to get their employees to put together packages of prior learning assessment as part of a partnership. Arizona Arizona State University is one of the robust campuses that is always thinking about ways of packaging what students know and are able to do with their Starbucks employees, with many different projects and employers that are engaged in the conversation. So there are avenues for increasing our marketing, training more individuals across the campuses, embedding PLA in our advising processes, being thoughtful about the financial piece. What we know is that for many students that the financial barrier around PLA, where some campuses might have different fees associated with it, can create a barrier. So is there a way to access scholarships or to access state or federal dollars to decrease the barrier of the financial costs associated with prior learning assessment? What we know is that when intentional action is taking place either at the state level, the regional level, the campus level, the system level, more students are able to access PLA or credit for prior. Students are able to see the benefits of decreased time and decreased costs along their journey to completion, and we are all part of the conversation around the benefit to our democracy, to our civic engagement, because we are increasing the percentage of individuals with high quality credentials and degrees that we know our country needs. Today's conversation is an opportunity to lift up prior learning assessment as an important strategy in the group of strategies that we might put in place in order to increase completion. Complete College America is telling us that we must be future ready. Activating PLA in a more intentional and robust way is a strategy that works, that requires some light, some sunshine on it. Those of you who are looking at artificial intelligence, it was not mentioned in the report. But if you're thinking about ways to streamline processes, thinking about creative ways to do more for students in unique and creative ways, perhaps there's an artificial intelligence or a mechanism to use that system as a way of getting more students aware of PLA, more students activating PLA, and then more students seeing the benefit of PLA. Both our adult learners as well as our traditional age students, which both reports articulate are not often thinking creatively about how to maximize their PLA opportunities. It is more for the adult learner population right now in our conversation, but there is something to be said for traditional age students who are volunteering, who have summer jobs, to think through how they might package what they know and are able to do. It is now 3:11. We will just leave you with a quote from Martin Luther King. I was very excited in today's plenary. Yolanda shared a Martin Luther King quote. This one resonates with me because it's about moving forward no matter what, that we have the opportunity to make a difference, and every step moves us closer to the success that we want to see for our learners, the success that we know we want to see for our institutions, and the communities that we want to continue to engage. It is our pleasure to be with you here today to elevate PLA, credit for prior learning, in the conversation around the future ready. If there are any questions or comments or elements that folks wanted to get in front of the conversation today, we still have 3 minutes before we let you go. Anyone want to share anything or ask a question? Yes, way in the back.
I didn't see a mention of English language that have considerable life experience. Is there a reason why they weren't included here?
I believe they were included in this study. We didn't talk about them specifically because we were just simply talking about adults in general. But there absolutely are ways to work with, English as a second language learners in order to extract their skills and experiences as well. So language should be no barrier in helping award students credit for prior learning.
And even credit for taking the ESL courses to begin with?
Sure, absolutely.
Excellent, excellent. Great point. Thank you for bringing up, for those of you who are online and may not have heard the question, the comment was, why didn't we center on English language learners? It is referenced in the report, the 2 Boost report, so you do have that as a reference, and thank you for bringing it up because it is absolutely an equity concern that we should all lean into, so thank you.
Absolutely.
With that, I'll turn it over to our colleague.
So first of all, I hope that we can all just really give a round of applause to appreciate our speakers today. It's an exciting time. I think that whether it's adult learners or frankly any learners, thinking about what they bring to the classroom and making sure that we give them credit for those things before they get there is just so important, and we're just so lucky to have them. I add just a couple of quick housekeeping things. There are all kinds of things that are in the app. If you really need help, right, downloading the app, if you have been unsuccessful, please stick around in the back of the room right after the session. I'm happy to help anyone that has not been able to get on so that you can do that. And speaking of the app, in the app for every session, there is a link in the description for a session evaluation, and we encourage you to fill those out. So one more time, I'd like to thank our speakers and encourage you to have a wonderful afternoon.